Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Better Together, the power of combining DTC and depletion data, however you want to say it, presented by Enolytics in partnership with Commerce7. I'm Tessa Davies with Commerce7. I'm the Growth and Event Marketing Manager with them. We've been putting on these expert partner webinars since quite a while now, but the better part of this year, in an effort to continue to provide free quality content and maintain great relationships with our partners. We're very happy that you've joined us today. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. We do have a Q&A box in here. It's a Zoom webinar. Feel free to type in a question whenever it comes up during the presentation. There'll be plenty of time to answer them after the presentation. The session is being recorded, so you don't need to take notes if you don't want to. We will be following up with that after today's session by email. I won't delay us any further. Here's your presenter, Kathy Hugh, co-founder of Enolytics. Take it away, Kathy.
Tessa, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to work with you on this and to work with Commerce7 as well. A couple of weeks ago, Commerce7 hosted their partner day in Vancouver, and Ron Scott, Enolytics' CTO, was able to attend. And it's just so good to get to know the company better and to know the skill sets better. And so thank you for welcoming us repeatedly. We really appreciate it.
Happy to welcome you guys. And Ron was a pleasure to have there.
And provided the inspiration for the soundtrack, apparently, for today's talk, which is great. So thank you all for joining and for recording this, for those of you who aren't able to join live. So Kathy Hoya, co-founder of Enolytics, and very happy and grateful to be here to share this topic with you today, which is one of the most recent developments of Enolytics that we're super excited about, both for now as well as for the future of the company, combining DTC and depletion data. As you could see, Chris Hoya, the other co-founder of Enolytics, and Ron Scott, our CTO, are on this call as well. So they will be here and monitoring the Q&A and chat boxes if anybody has any questions, particularly when it comes to technology or development of the product. Great. So let's go ahead and just jump in. The things that we're going to cover today, today's focus, of course, is DTC analytics. And we wanted to just present a reminder that, that Enolytics' software is so much more than just reporting, because DTC is about so much more than just reporting. We're going to talk about depletion data and combining that with DTC and the benefits of that. We'll look at a case study, how it looks and how it actually works. And then we're going to go into additional benefits that you could derive from combining DTC with depletion data. All right. So first, a little bit about our software for DTC. So Enolytics, for those of you who aren't aware, we're a technology company that has built a couple layers of analytics that sits on top of industry data. One layer of analytics sits on top of DTC. Another layer of analytics sits on top of depletion data. And now we are combining those two things. So that's obviously the reason we're here. It's obviously the reason for our relationship with Commerce7. So if you are a customer of Commerce7, or if you're thinking about becoming a customer of Commerce7, you're the perfect candidate to also be tapping into the power of the technology, both for depletion and now as well for DTC. Wanted to just kind of present a couple of reminders, though, that DTC software and analytics is about so much more than reporting. There's a lot more to DTC, as you know, because it's so customer rich. It's so many opportunities there for connecting with your customers and cultivating that relationship. So although certainly you can create reports within Enolytics, we wanted to present just a couple of reminders of what else is possible to do. So starting out with the executive dashboard, which is, it highlights the key performance indicators that over the past 2 years since the software has been available, we've heard from DTC managers are super important to them to track on a regular basis. Things like overall sales, tasting room conversions to wine club, average order value, that sort of thing. The wine club module and the tasting room module go hand in hand. The wine club module in particular, it looks at variables including churn rate and identifying club members who are at various levels of risk of leaving the club, as well as customer lifetime value and various other KPIs. The tasting room module actually becomes a management tool for tasting room managers to monitor their sales associates' performance over time. Over the lifetime of that sales associate at that winery, as well as the lifetime of products and destinations and generations of those products. We also see it used for management to incentivize tasting room staff, as well as to calculate commissions and things like that. We enhance the data. We enhance the data in a lot of different ways, including by gender and generation and geography. So, for example, we run an algorithm based on first name to identify the gender of the customer. So Ron would register as male, Kathy would register as female, Chris would register as androgynous or unknown. We also look at birth date to calculate generation, as well as if you're talking to a male boomer or a female millennial, et cetera. And then we also look at at geography. In the US, we cross-reference the zip code with US Census data to be able to identify area of affluence. So whether somebody lives in a highly affluent area, a middle-class area, et cetera. Those are a couple of ways that we enhance customer demographics and RFM analysis as well. How recently, how frequently, and how much money does a customer spend? And that helps you learn things like who are your loyal customers, who are your big spenders, who are your passive customers who have sort of slipped into kind of lethargy around your brand. In terms of inventory and inventory insights, we track that and provide KPIs, including days of inventory on hand, sell-through percentage, as well as inventory turnover specific to your DTC business. And because all this data is updated every 24 hours and we pull through as much historical data as possible, we use machine learning in order to predict the next 12 to 24 months of your winery's performance, and specifically different wines as well. So as you can imagine, that's particularly helpful when putting together budgets, for example, and also predicting future performance against the budget for each of your wines. There's that data cleansing module as well, data quality module, I should say, in order to clean up customer data. When we onboard a new winery onto Commerce7, we identify troubled areas according to a couple different parameters, namely birth date to make sure that that's accurate, and address and phone number, and whether or not there are any duplicate records. So those are a couple other features in addition to reporting that we do. In terms of the interface, I'm not a coder, I'm not a programmer, I'm not an engineer, I'm a writer and a communicator. And my thumbprint, if there was one, into the software is a very user-friendly, intuitive interface that literally asks who, what, where, when, why, and how much. Who did we sell to? And you sort of click that link and you're brought to a page of who you sold to and their demographics. What did we sell? What was sold together? You click those links and you're brought to different pages. Where did we sell? That gives you insight about the geography. We also provide daily and weekly email updates depending on who wants to see that information. Daily, it's usually staff. Weekly is usually ownership. And of course, there is a very robust reporting module that allows you and enables you and empowers you to create essentially any report that you could imagine from scratch in just a matter of seconds, which is really exciting and really powerful. The advanced segmentation module is essentially show me customers who have bought this, but not that. Show me customers who have bought this wine, but have not bought that wine, which is helpful if you're going to release a new vintage, for example, and you want to reach out to customers who have bought the previous vintage. Show me customers who have bought the previous vintage, but not yet the current vintage. Or if you want to reach out to customers who have bought on your website, but not yet visited your tasting room. That's a segmentation, advanced segmentation module. And finally, we do a 30-day free trial for anybody who's currently using Commerce7 and wants to sort of kick the tires on the system a little bit. So it takes us about a week to get a winery up and running on the 30-day free trial. And then that's when the month starts after that. So you're welcome to explore because we want more people using the system because it's your data and we are here to help you get the most out of it. Okay, so shifting gears to Better Together, the power of combining DTC and depletion data. Certainly, DTC data is incredibly powerful for a winery, incredibly valuable for a winery because of the profit margins, of course, and because of the ability for customers, direct to consumer clients, to be fans of your brand and to help cultivate your brands across social media, across word of mouth, all of those things. And most wineries also want to have a presence in restaurants and retail, especially in the US. So that's where the depletion or the wholesale data comes in. And so what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about is how it looks to combine those two things. So here we go. So the direct-to-consumer data, Commerce7 lives in Commerce7, of course, and the depletion data could live in a couple different places. It could live with your distributor, but often most wineries use multiple distributors, in which case this explains our development of a relationship with VIP, which stands for Vermont Information Processing, where now Enolytics is proudly now part of the VIP collective. And essentially what VIP does is aggregate distributor data from 2,400 different distributors all around the country. So it's super efficient if a winery works with both Commerce7 and VIP for us to bring those two streams of data together in order to visualize it for the full 360-degree view of your business. So if anybody has any questions on that or how that actually works, please drop that into the chat box or the Q&A for Chris and Ron. All right. So how does this look? What does it actually look like? So here's the first glance. Here's a first glance at this, and let's start here with a singular view of all of your cases, 9-liter equivalent cases. So the DTC data shown sort of, running across the top there, it shows your Commerce7 channel. That's where that looks. We're showing it here month by month. Although, as you know, we update Commerce7 data every day as well. And then the on and off premise are the wholesale channels, right? And they're defined through either VIP or your distributor. And VIP data has the added benefit of further defining the channels to designate whether it's a restaurant or a bar or a liquor store or an Italian restaurant or a Chinese restaurant, et cetera. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, in a glance, a summary of how it looks to combine your DTC and your wholesale channel data. Then we can start getting into the filters. So the filters are incredibly powerful because it helps you get more granular about your data. So here are a couple of the filters that we could look at. So you could filter by geography, for example, which is, of course, where people live, what state, what metro area, what maybe small metro area or city they're in. The account information is very rich, particularly when the depletion data is coming from VIP, and the product data, which is maintained in Commerce7. So very interesting and very sort of clearly relying on those two separate sources of data to bring this together in order to present a complete picture. Okay. So Enolytics also, as I mentioned before, enhances the geographical area by combining it with US Census data, zip code by zip code, in order to say if these accounts are in an affluent area or a middle class area or a highly affluent area, etc. So it helps to look at an example. So let's have a look at this. So we just saw this image. the DTC and the off-premise and the on-premise channels all together. But let's say you then wanted to filter by varietal. So let's just pick Cabernet Sauvignon. So now what we've done here is we drilled down, filtered just by one option, which is Cab. And so now you can see that it's obviously the totals are smaller because it'll just be one varietal or one example. So you could also keep filtering, essentially. You could, for example, apply a filter for New York City, in which case you would then update, this image would then be updated to cases of Cabernet Sauvignon sold through all the channels in New York City. And that's just one example of what we can do in terms of filters. And there's a lot of others, but we'll just stick to that for the moment. So an advantage of having your DTC and depletion data all together is that we can start reviewing them in relation to each other. We can start looking at the ratio of DTC and depletion data together. So I love this image. Obviously the lower 48 states, and what we're seeing here is a visualization of the percentage of cases that go state by state into the DTC channel and those that go into the 3-tier channel. So in California, as sort of popped up here, you can see that it's about 1/3 DTC, 1/3 wholesale. But in cases in states like Oregon and Washington and Virginia and Pennsylvania, just as another example, they are more heavy leaning toward DTC. And so what does that tell you then? So this is just a little bit of a closer look on that. If you wanted to look at a high ratio, one of those states where it's mostly yellow, that shows a high ratio of wholesale relative to DTC. A medium, maybe more even ratio is when the image on the right, where the DTC is maybe a little bit even more than the wholesale channel. So the idea here is that you could look at an image like this and be able to say, sort of countrywide or wherever your wines are represented, what the breakdown looks like, and also to help you create a plan and strategize. If you've got a really strong DTC presence, maybe you want to expand into the wholesale tier. Or if you've got a really strong presence in wholesale, maybe you want to go further into the DTC channel. So that's sort of the overview, and we're going to get a little more specific here next. So we're going to look at Palm Springs just for an example. So Palm Springs, California. I actually, we were looking at this earlier, and Ron was like, that looks like Jurassic Park or something, but it's actually Palm Springs, California. It's one thing to see your data as we've been looking at it so far today in tabular format, but it's another thing to look at it visualized in images. And so we're going to take this example of Palm Springs and look at a fictitious winery and how this works for them. So think of it as building layers, building different layers of visibility of all of your data through all of the channels. Okay, so here is layer one. So I want to draw your attention to the legend at the top of the screen here. So yellow visualizes on-premise accounts, pink visualizes off-premise accounts. So this is obviously depletion data for a fictitious winery, for one fictitious winery within, and their presence within Palm Springs in this case. So they've got 5 on-premise accounts and just 1 off-premise accounts in the Palm Springs area. When we hover over it, this black box pops up, and you get a more detailed view of what type of account it is and what wines they've purchased from the winery in the past. So really good detail there. In this case, what we're looking at is Cooking with Class is a restaurant that's not part of a chain. That's important. Not part of a chain, but they purchased from the winery last in July 2022, and they bought Cabernet and Zinfandel. So in our selected period, which is, you could select the period that you want to be looking at, they purchased almost 12 cases from the winery. And the size of the bubbles it represents the amount of cases bought. So the bigger the bubble, the more cases that they've bought. So that's layer one. So now going on to layer two, let's layer on the DTC customers. So we've still got the on-premise, we've still got the off-premise, and now visualized in red is the DTC customers who live in the Palm Springs area in this specific geography. So here again, you can also see the black box is showing who bought what. So now we're starting to have a little bit of an idea of how far our customers are living geographically from our wholesale accounts. And so when you have a concentration of DTC customers, it might be a good idea to have an on-premise account nearby. So that's layer two of the data. We started with on and off premise, layered on DTC customers, and now we're going to go further. And the third layer is lost accounts. So those of you who are familiar with working with depletion data will know that a lost account means that it's a restaurant or retailer who have bought from you in the past, but haven't bought from you in a period of time. And through the system, you're able to designate what period of time you want that to be. It could be 6 months ago, it could be 12 months ago, etc. So in the case of this fictitious winery that we're looking at, we set the lost account parameter to 12 months, and that's visualized in gray. So lost accounts are visualized in gray. And so right away, the salespeople in the room will recognize this as a great opportunity for the staff to reconnect with accounts, especially if they've got DTC customers in the neighborhood or in the area. Okay, so that was layer three, on-premise, off-premise first, DTC customers next, and then lost accounts third. So now, and this is, I think, really a game changer, we're on here to layer four. Layer four is about possibilities on-premise and possibilities off-premise. So thanks to the power of VIP data, Vermont Information Processing, which is the aggregator of depletion data from distributors all around the country, we can also visualize possible or potential accounts. So these are accounts that the winery has never done business with, and they've never sold your brand. So notice again the legend at the top of this slide. The light blue bubbles indicate on-premise accounts where your winery has never done business. And the dark blue is off-premise where your winery has never done business. And now suddenly we start to get really the full picture of Palm Springs, in this case, for this particular winery. So what we're looking at here essentially is wholesale account deserts. Deserts, that is, where you have a lot of DTC customers, but you have no presence on or off premise. So that's where the light blue and the dark blue come in. So now we can show you possibilities. We can show you what's possible accounts that could be a good target to you relative to your DTC customers, as well as your lost accounts, as well as even neighborhoods where you want to be, you want your wines to be sold. So hopefully would add to fruitful conversations with your distributors about where you want to expand the brand geographically. Obviously here you could also add more filters that help you visualize your DTC counts, customers in relation to your depletion accounts. So that's a lot. And I just wanted to kind of pause for a second and see if that makes sense. I think it's really, it's one of the things that we're most excited about, sort of the evolution of Enolytics, to be able to offer this and to be able to combine these two kinds of data, because it really gives the winery the full, complete 360-degree view of the business. So just wanted to pause there for a second. And I'm not monitoring the chat box as I'm talking, but hopefully you can drop any questions in there as we go on. Okay. So the United States is a very big market. And how do you know where you want to expand? How do you figure that out? Salespeople, owners can't possibly sort of navigate all that information one by one. I mean, you could, but it would take a really long time and probably not the best use of your time, especially not when it could be automated. So that's what the technology enables us to do, is to help you identify areas of expansion where you could help accelerate your wholesale growth, especially in relation to your DTC presence. So let's have a look at this opportunity in particular. So here we've sort of narrowed it down again for our fictitious winery, looking at on-premise opportunities specifically in Miami, Florida. So you can see where your DTC customers are, and also where the possibilities are in terms of on-premise. So these could be, for example, restaurants and bars that are likely an area where most wineries want to have a presence, or maybe where are the hotspots of interest for a particular kind of restaurant or bar in a city where you want to expand. So we help you to identify where those hotspots and where those potential areas of growth and expansion are. So remember, these accounts in light and dark blue have never before sold any of your wines. And this is the big value add with working with data coming from VIP. So we do also show you your active accounts, your lost accounts, and any DTC customers that are in the neighborhood. So you can also further on then also filter by specific kind of restaurant or bar. As I said earlier, maybe you want to focus on Italian restaurants or Chinese restaurants or pubs or English style pubs, that sort of thing. So you can get really granular about this, but the best part is that it's automated. You don't have to figure this out with pen and paper for yourself. Okay. We can also take the same approach for off-premise accounts and also for chains. So here's an example of Whole Foods in Southern California. So you can see the accounts where you're active. Those are the ones in pink. And the ones that you've lost where you used to be active, those are the ones in gray. And the opportunity is in blue to expand further with this particular chain, that is Whole Foods in Southern California. So now all this information is visualized and possible for you to look at on a daily basis if you wanted to. So that's a lot of possibilities there. It's a lot of possibilities. So we wanted to offer some strategies and some questions for you to consider, especially regarding your wholesale strategy relative to your DTC presence. So here's a couple questions to keep in mind, or some questions that really you could answer because of the combination of the DTC and the depletion combo. So what is your depletion geographic coverage relative to your DTC customers, especially your top and loyal customers? Remember, that's something that we can identify within the Enolytics DTC software as well. Those top and loyal customers will be ambassadors to your brand, right? They'll be ambassadors to your brand and won't hesitate to promote your brand to their circle of friends. Another question is, once you've established wholesale accounts close to your DTC customers, maybe you could create a marketing campaign informing them that the wines from your brand are now also available in those bars and restaurants. What's your strategy for lost accounts? Is it worth revisiting? Is it an account that you want to reactivate? You can see that now in relation to your DTC customers. Based on clusters of wholesale accounts, who are the best options to become customers. And maybe also doing some outreach specifically to penetrate the DTC market, where you have a strong presence in wholesale or in on-premise in particular. Can you use this information to help you set up the most successful winemaker or owner visits? When there's an in-market visit, the winemaker's coming to town, how do you know where they should go? Which neighborhood should they focus on? Presumably those neighborhoods where there's already a strong presence, but also where there's a presence that you want to be, that you want to establish because of all of the information and the different data that you can think of. So those are just a couple of ideas, and I'm sure that that those of you on the call can think of more. Okay, circling back to Commerce7. It almost goes without saying, but good data in, good data out, right? So we wanted to just spend a moment identifying or just a few reminders about best practices for DTC and the use of Commerce7 in particular. So obviously capturing DTC address information is a very big deal because we're talking about geography. We're talking about plotting things out geographically on a map. And we can't do that if we don't have good quality data about the geography of the customer regarding DTC in particular. So that's why it's so important to use that data cleansing module. It's so important to keep your data clean and updated and really, really accurate so that all of the other visualizations that derive from it will be accurate. And also, even more importantly, try not to use or have anybody at your winery use the guest account for processing DTC orders. When you use the guest account, there's no information gathered about the customer, which means that there's no way that you could then follow up with the customer sort of further down further down the customer journey. Okay. So we want to share a couple other insights that are possible with the combined data of DTC and depletion. There's a lot of them, but in the interest of time, we'll only keep it to a few. So here is the distribution of your wines by major channel, that is wholesale and DTC. So of course you could apply filters to visualizations like this, including on-premise and off-premise. Or a specific city, for example, or a combination of both. You can also drill down into the wine. You could select any wine that would be listed here and do a drill down into that. And that will provide you with this information, but for a specific SKU or a specific varietal, if that's sort of the filter that you chose. Sorry, my hands are all over the place. This image, the next one, shows the distribution of all your wines in both major channels. So for instance, the Chalk Hill Rosé, which is the aqua colored one in the top row, it's good for 15% of all cases in your wholesale channel, but only a little more than 10% in your DTC channel. So good information to have, and maybe also food for thought about possibly rearranging the ratio of where those wines are presented. Okay, let's get a little bit further into forecasting. Forecasting is especially important when you are, particularly at this time of year, maybe when you're working on budgets. So our thinking was, what if you could see all of the future cases that would be required of you in the different channels? So mathematically speaking, we can help you calculate that. And here's how that looks. So here we're looking at the next 24 months. That's the shaded area in this visualization. The shaded area in this visualization are the next 24 months forecasted using machine learning for DTC and wholesale data together for this fictitious winery that we have. So probably you want to sell as much wine as possible through your DTC channel because of the higher profit margin. But now we can also help you help you figure out the forecast and the demand, mathematically speaking, based on historical data for individual wines and also for specific varietals and also for specific distributors. So maybe you need to sit down with your distributor and have a conversation about how things are going in the trend lines and what could be done sort of proactively to prevent sort of a turn for the worse further down the line. This also is helpful when you're thinking about producing enough wine or allocating enough wine to the different channels. Okay. Another opportunity is in enhanced marketing campaigns. What if you could use the information you have about your DTC customers to expand your wholesale performance? So here, San Francisco, DTC customers shown in red, off-premise accounts where you're already located are in pink, and on-premise accounts are in yellow. So you could, if you wanted, run marketing campaigns to inform your DTC customers of the closest restaurants or bars or even retail stores where they can get your wine. And you can also use it as a sales argument to the wholesale account that you'll promote the restaurant or bar to your DTC customers in that neighborhood. So depending on your strategy, depending on where you want the breakout and the ratio to go, those are all opportunities. Let's also look at pricing, which is another advantage of combining your DTC and your wholesale data. So I love this image and this graphic. So let me sort of break it down a little bit. So here we're showing different wines and the different price points that they were sold at. So each bubble represents either a wholesale account or a DTC customer. In our case, you can see that off-premise pricing in pink is often less expensive than on-premise pricing, which is in yellow. You can also see that DTC pricing is red, is also usually the most expensive. So we identify the wholesale accounts with the minimum, maximum, and average prices, and in comparison to your compare at price in pricing in Commerce7. So that's another way that it all comes together. So we've put all this effort into expanding the wholesale business for this fictitious winery. And it might be interesting to also include a where to buy link on your website, which is also possible to do through this combination and through this integration. So maybe you want to limit what shows up on your website to only on-premise accounts, so as not to take away from your own website sales. Or maybe you want to also add your off-premise accounts, so customers can go and buy the bottle right then and right there. So Enolytics provides an interface that your web designers can use to visualize your wholesale accounts on your website, including the address and phone number of those accounts. Okay, so what's the process? How does this happen? How can we work together and for you to have access to all of this information? It's actually pretty simple. So you're already on the journey because you're probably already a Commerce7 customer. So check off step 1, which is great. Step 2 is to sign up with Enolytics for DTC. As I mentioned earlier, we have a 30-day, no strings attached free trial going. And if you're not already a customer, it's really exciting to see what's possible within those 30 days to have a really deep dive into your DTC data. So step 3 then would be to ensure that you have access to your wholesale data. The easiest way to go is to, if you're not already with VIP, to sign up with VIP if you have more than one distributor. That's because VIP works with all those distributors, and it's a lot easier to get one file from VIP than it is to go and chase down distributor by distributor. So VIP also has a starter pack that they developed for this opportunity at a very reasonable price. So the last step then would be to sign up for the Enolytics Depletion Suite that will also combine the Depletion and the DTC subscription together. So now you're really ready. Now you're really ready to make this happen, and to get that full 360-degree view of your business, and begin strategizing about the ratio and the different interactions between the two sets of data. So let me pause here for Q&A, and also just put my contact information up for you in the meantime.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That was fantastic.
I hope we're good on time, Tessa. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, there was plenty of questions asked during your presentation that Ron and Chris have answered in the Q&A box by chat.
Awesome.
But if anyone else has any other questions for Kathy, I can ask them to her right now. Feel free to write them in chat.
I'd also want to put out there that that what we're seeing already from the early adopters of this system, of the combination, I should say, is that is the savings of time. The savings of time to get all of this data visualized from your DTC sort of over here, and all this data visualized from your depletion or wholesale channel over here. And I've heard literally about wineries who print out maps of those and try to collate them together, sort of in a very analog way. And the idea here is to say that that's just not necessary, not or anymore, I should say. So that is one of the time savings of not having to do that. I think is really valuable.
Great point. Peter has just asked, is the distributor depletion data used for the forecasting / inventory planning tools, or just DTC?
Great question. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to come off mute and actually answer that question. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Great question. And so for the forecasting, it is actually a combination of depletion and DTC. So we use both of them. So you can forecast both channels. So if you, for instance, and then you can use your filters on it, right? So if you want to then filter down to a specific wine, you can do that. And if you think that you might not have enough wine to fulfill that forecast, at that point, you can actually then start making the decision whether you want to move as much as you can of that to your DTC channel based on your separate DTC forecasting. But it is DTC and depletion together.
And also, Chris, while you're still here, or Ron, maybe this is for you. Jessica is asking, do we have any efficiency data for the automated suggestions, specifically saying, go to wholesale accounts near these DTC customers?
Yeah, so I'll kind of throw out that this is our first foray with these two sets of data together, and right now we're allowing you to explore and to evaluate that decision-making process yourself. I think over time, it's definitely one of the things that I would like to start talking with Chris about working into the product, which is, how can we make some automated suggestions around what and what criteria could be used that, machines could help us determine what are the better locations for going after some of these cross business model relationships with, the distributors and the on and off premise locations.
Yeah, and you can already do that. It's not like we are telling you go look there, but if you, for instance, where Kathy showed you what we did for Miami, an area in Miami, basically you go to that table that is there, and you just sort it by your number of depletion customers, and then it will tell you which area have the most depletion customers and what, how many possible accounts are there. So it is actually there. It's just not that we don't put it right in front of you to say go look at Miami. But if you just know how to sort into those tables, you actually can get that information pretty fast.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, if there are no further questions, if you do have a question that comes up, Kathy just did have her email address up there. You can feel free to give her a shout. We will also send this recording by email, including a link to our next upcoming partner webinar, which is happening on October 26th with Community Benchmark. So if you haven't already registered, please do. And again, I want to thank Kathy and the analytics team. Thank you so much for joining us today and for taking the time. This was fantastic.
Thank you, Tessa. Thanks for having us.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
you.
everyone.